welcome back to Murder, Lies and Everything in Between, a true crime podcast with me, Jess, and my husband, Atty.
Hi, guys.
Hope you are all good this week. We're actually really, really good, aren't we, babe? We have just got back from a night out, actually, haven't we? We went to the cinema.
A night out? You mean
Well,
an
afternoon.
Afternoon now. I wouldn't say it's night out.
It's night to me, all right?
Fucking hell, anything past 5 o'clock is night to you.
Yeah, we went and watched the new John Wick, didn't we? Is it John Wick 4?
Yeah, part 4.
Yeah, we went and watched that, and it was actually really, really good, wasn't it?
Really good. Long, by the way. If anyone hasn't seen it yet, it's a very long film.
Yeah,
a very good film.
Yeah, I think it was longer than I definitely expected it to be.
Yeah,
but it was fantastic. It was really, really good, actually. I think it was one of the best.
I would say it's best out of all of them.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, I would say it's best out of all. But they've all been good. They've all had their good moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it was actually really, really good. We were actually out celebrating our wedding anniversary, our first wedding anniversary.
We was.
So yeah, so it's been really, really nice. But now it's back to the grind, isn't it?
Yes, and sorry about that noise in the background, guys. Our dog is sitting on my lap, and she wants to get involved.
Because we've been out, so she wants love and cuddles. Normally we put her away because she does kind of tend to sit on Attie's lap right next to the mics. So yeah, we tend to put her away, but today she needs some extra loving because we've been out.
She's been a bit needy.
Yeah, so sorry if you can hear her in the background huffing and puffing. I'll try to drown it out as much as we can.
Nah, she wants to talk into the mic. She wants to get involved in the cast.
That's it. Yeah, she's part of us. So today we are going to be jumping into a case that I've actually never heard of. I don't think it's very well known at all, and the reason for it, like some of the other cases that we've kind of covered, is because there's not a lot of information on this case, like at all.
Right.
It was actually one of the hardest cases I've had to research because there's so little information in any sources about the case that it's just really, really hard to kind of research. So I've tried to kind of go as deep as I can into this, but again, what I found is not a lot.
Okay.
But I do think that this is one of those cases that it needs to be covered because it's so important that the victim is kind of advocated for, and especially, I'm not going to ruin it, but especially because of how it all kind of turns out, I do think that the victim needs to be advocated for in this case. So if you have ever heard of this is a case we're going to be going to Scotland this week, and this is a case in Edinburgh in Scotland.
Right.
And the victim actually was a young girl called Ann Ballantine. On the 21st of January 1987 in Edinburgh, Scotland, it was a typical cold winter day. Sitting at around kind of 2 degrees, the Union Canal that runs from Falkirk to Edinburgh had iced over, and it had just started to thaw out as the temperatures of the afternoon rose. In the Fountain Bridge area of the city, 3 men were walking along the pathway of the canal when they spotted something out of place floating in the water. Upon taking a closer look, they saw what they thought to be the body of a young woman wrapped in a large piece of carpet, clearly dead. Officers arrived at the scene and the body was soon recovered. The woman's identity wasn't able to be ascertained right away due to obviously the levels of decomposition, her being in the water. So they would need to identify her from her dental records, which obviously they needed to go about attaining. In the meantime, Graham Ballantine, a local man, had taken his car to his local garage. Whilst waiting, he overheard a conversation between some other people about a body being found in the Union Canal. This piqued Graham's curiosity, and he was immediately overwhelmed with worry and concern. You see, the reason he was so worried and concerned was because his daughter, Ann Ballantine, had been missing for around 2 months since the middle of November.
Right.
Anne lived alone in a flat on Dalry Road in Polworth. This was about 100 yards away from where the woman's body had actually been found in the Union Canal. So not very far from her flat that she lived in alone. And the Union Canal actually runs through Polworth, so where she lives. It runs through it. I've looked at it on a map and it literally runs across the whole street, so like through them.
Yeah.
It's actually quite a nice area, to be honest. It actually looks quite cool to live in. So it was kind of a very good chance that this could possibly be his missing daughter. So from my research, I can't be sure on how long it actually took for the police to link missing Ann Ballantine to the body being found in the canal, or whether it was Graham and Isabel, Ann's mum, if they actually called the police to tell them that their daughter had gone missing and that the girl they found could be her. Okay, I'm not sure how it happened because it wasn't documented, but the police found out that Ann Ballantine had obviously been reported missing, and there was a chance that it could be her.
Right.
Okay. Isabel, Ann's mum, was asked if she had any scars or marks on her head that could help identify if this was her daughter. Okay. But she couldn't remember. She couldn't remember any scars or anything on Ann's head. So she had 3 kids. Okay. She couldn't remember every scar and knock that they all had. So she kind of just said, look, I'm really, really sorry. I can't remember. But a family friend who happened to be the hairdresser of the family as well recognised, you know, she dealt with her head all the time. She knew that if she had any scars or anything. So the family hairdresser actually offered to help identify if this body was Anne or if it wasn't Anne. Okay, so she went to help identify the body. By the scar on the victim's head, sadly, the body found in the Union Canal was 20-year-old Anne, and it was successfully confirmed by the family friend, and eventually dental records confirmed this as well. Okay, so the hairdresser confirmed this was Anne, and then dental records soon later
confirmed it,
yeah. So Anne had suffered a horrific attack. Her killer had basically rolled her in a dirty piece of carpet, naked, hands and feet bound with rope. She had been raped and strangled to death using a ligature around her neck.
What's the ligature? What's that?
Ligature, so basically it's when they use some kind of knot.
Right.
As like kind of like a strangulation device.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you sure she wasn't into the kinky stuff?
No.
Some people like being choked.
No, it wasn't that.
Right.
She was asphyxiated with that. Okay, so Anne's official cause of death confirmed in the post-mortem was asphyxia and what they call vagal inhibition, which essentially just means that her heart stopped beating.
Right.
That's what it basically means. So
could have just been easy to say that in heart stopped beating. So
they never make it that easy. It's a post-mortem. They don't make it that easy.
Could just go heart stop beating.
We don't have to understand it, okay? We're not medical professionals.
Not use all these fancy words and do you know what I mean? Get straight to the point. Heart stop beating.
I get what you're saying, yeah. So the question that must have been on the investigator's mind was, where had Ann Ballantine been for 2 months since her last confirmed sighting? Okay, remember she'd been missing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the question popped into my head when I started kind of looking into this case was, why did no one report her missing sooner? Okay, and how could a 20-year-old girl with close family connections, close friends, big group of friends, how could no one report her missing? How could she disappear without a trace? I'll start at the beginning on how this all kind of... So I've gone over how she was found and what her cause of death was. I'll start from the beginning of Anne's life, okay? So Anne was born the eldest daughter of Isabel and Graham Ballantine. Isabel was quite young at the time. She was only 18 when she had Anne. The couple went on years later to have 2 more children together, which was Grace and Alan.
Right.
Okay. Anne was a really, really good baby. She was really, really happy-go-lucky, her mum said. So she was just like an easy baby to kind of have. As she grew up, she flourished into a really kind of caring, clever and thoughtful, beautiful girl. And I've seen pictures of her. She is really beautiful. Like, she's really, really pretty. She attended the Trinity Academy School, where she seemed to kind of have like a really large group of friends, and she was really, really well liked. So a lot of people just seemed to get on with her. She just seemed like that kind of person that everybody got on with. Anne worked on the Canongate Youth Project, which actually helped the youth in the area attend clubs and activities, and she volunteered with them. And if this wasn't enough, she also regularly helped disabled children. So she was like a super just caring, kind of giving person. Yeah. You know, she did all this voluntary work just off her own back because she really, really enjoyed it. So on the flip side of all of this, Anne loved heavy, heavy rock music. So not what you would kind of link with what the other thing she does is volunteering. You wouldn't link them two things, but she was super into heavy rock music. She intended gigs all the time around the city, and she would hang out with like the Edinburgh biker crowd.
Right.
So she even had tickets, funnily enough, to an Alice Cooper concert. So it just shows how that was her personality as well as, yeah. The funny thing is that Anne's softer side, she really wanted to settle down. She wanted to get married and she wanted to have kids.
Okay.
So she had
Yeah,
these
that's
two
normal.
kind of sides. Yeah,
Well,
like
that's,
this.
that's a normal thing. And
It
if you like,
is,
it
yeah,
don't
but
matter if you like rock music. You don't have to be an evil bastard to like rock music, do
no,
you?
I'm not saying that.
Well, that's
but
what it sounds like.
No,
You know what I mean? You stereotyping people.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is it just they don't tend, for me, visionary. They don't go hand in hand for me.
So you stereotyping.
No, I'm not stereotyping.
There's some films I like. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't think I like them kind of movies.
I know what you're saying.
You know,
yeah.
the kind of movies I like.
Well, Anne adored children, and she seemed to kind of be really excited for what her future should have held. So she really wanted to settle down, get married, and have kids. Anne actually thought she'd found this in Joe Burden, who she'd been engaged to for a period of time before she went missing. For reasons unbeknownst to us, they had broken up around the 14th of November 1986. According to the people around them, it was amicable kind of on both sides, both remaining friends afterwards. Anne was living alone in the flat in Yeoman Place on Dalry Road. At the time, she didn't have a job, but she was confident that would turn around soon. So she was volunteering, but she didn't actually have a concrete job that she was being paid to do. On the 18th of November 1986, Anne and her mum visited the Royal Infirmary to visit a friend. Afterwards, they both went back to the family home, where they chatted for a while until Anne left to go back to her own flat. Before Anne left, they confirmed plans for Anne to stay over on Christmas Eve. Okay, so in a few weeks' time, they planned that she would definitely be coming over on Christmas Eve to spend Christmas Day with the whole family at her mum and dad's house.
Right.
So her mum and dad lived in Warriston Road, okay, in an apartment at Warriston Road. And her flat in Yeoman Place, that was approximately 2.4 miles away from each other. Okay, and it would take about 42 minutes to walk it. So that's how long it would roughly take. I'm not sure. I can't find anywhere if she walked, if she got a bus, anything like. We can't find that anywhere. But she went to her own flat, and I'm assuming she must have probably walked it because nothing was commented about she got a bus or any CCTV was seen, anything like that.
Okay.
Over the next few days, there were sporadic sightings of her all over the city by kind of like friends of friends and people that she kind of knew in the area. So it's likely that she did make it home on the evening of the 18th. But after these sightings, there's nothing of her at all. It's like she'd literally just dropped off the face of the planet and was just placed back on it on the 21st of January.
Right.
That's what it seemed like. It was so strange. A friend of Anne's alerted Isabel and Graham, her parents, that she had failed to turn up to plans that she had made with her. She obviously got quite concerned. This was super out of character for her. And this was around the 23rd of November. So roughly 5 days after she'd seen her mum and dad. So there'd been sightings for a few days after the 18th by friends of friends in the area, but then nothing. And then her friends went
5 days?
Yeah. So
and no one said nothing for 5 days?
No, so people had seen her for a few days, but then after that, she literally just dropped off the face of the planet until these plans that she'd made with her friends, she didn't turn up to. And her friend was like, well, this is weird. So she went to her flat and she couldn't get any answer from her at her flat.
But even if you don't have contact with someone just for 1 day, someone would pick that up, though, surely. Why is it taking X amount of days?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, yeah. I was it gets weirder than this, yeah. Right. Just a few days, I would be concerned, especially because in everything that I read, Anne would regularly go over to her mum and dad to like do a washing and get some food and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. She would regularly go over to her mum and dad's. So when that wasn't happening, you would think that alarm bells would ring straight away. You would think, but they did get alerted at one point. So her friend that she had plans with, she did go to Isabel and Graham and say to them, look, I had plans with her. She didn't turn up. I'm a bit worried.
Yeah.
So they went to her flat to see if they could get an answer from her, thinking that, oh, she'll just answer the door. She's been sleeping or something. But the attempts were completely fruitless.
Mm-hmm.
She was nowhere to be found. She wasn't answering the door, nothing. They actually started posting like notes through her door and her letterbox with money, asking for her to call them, even if she was skinned. Like, here's some money, give us a call, kind of thing. So she didn't make any contact though. She didn't nothing. There was no call. There was no nothing. Nothing seemed to work. So we're going to fast forward to Christmas Day. So remember, this is weeks after this. They've been doing all this, posting notes and stuff for weeks, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Christmas Eve, she should have gone over to her parents' house. She didn't turn up.
Right.
So when Christmas Day kind of came and went, she hadn't shown up. Her dad, Graham, on Boxing Day, decided to kind of take the step eventually to go and report her missing to the police.
Why don't they just fucking kick down the door?
Well, I don't know, okay?
Well, why haven't they got a spare key to that house?
What made me, and I don't want to sound like, I really don't want to sound like I'm not victim blaming, but I don't want to sound as though I'm being really harsh on the parents, because none of this is their fault.
No, I'm not saying that, but like, if you've
we're talking 4 weeks, like nearly 4 weeks before you're like, you see her all the time.
I don't understand, like you've gone round there, you've dropped notes and money, just
yeah,
give us a call, blah blah blah. I understand, maybe mobile phones wasn't a big thing back in 19.
I don't even know if 1986 they even was a thing.
But there was payphones, so I understand them dropping money, like give us a call, blah blah blah, whatever. Yeah, £1 through the door, whatever, a couple quid through the door. But after a couple of days, surely you go back the next day or a couple of days later and be like, try and get in somehow. There's a window, or surely a lot of parents have spare keys to your houses, don't you? Do you know what I mean? So why didn't they have a spare key? Then
I don't know.
After that, why don't you just go, right, that's it?
Yeah, I don't
I'm kicking
know.
down the door.
I mean, I don't
I'm coming in.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't want to say. I keep saying it because I don't want to seem like I'm coming across harsh towards her parents, but it's like 4 weeks.
Yeah,
like 4 weeks before you report your daughter missing.
I think it should have been a couple of days, and if that was my daughter, I would have just kicked down the door.
You would, wouldn't you?
You know.
But again, it's not their fault. But yeah, we'll leave it. We'll leave it as that. We'll leave it as that. So, thankfully, when they kind of reported her missing to the police, they did take it seriously, and they immediately went about visiting her flat.
Did they kick down the door when they got there?
No.
Oh my God.
So they did check for any kind of signs of damaging or tampering to the door, though. Okay, and they didn't see any. So they didn't see any damage to the door. They spoke to kind of her really, really large group of friends. They had no information that could lead the officers to her. And finally, they ended up speaking to her ex-fiancé, who also, again, couldn't shed on any light where Anne possibly could be. So they spoke to everyone they felt that they could have.
Mm-hmm.
Anne had literally, as I said, vanished into thin air. That was until the 21st of January, the year after her initial disappearance, that her body miraculously appeared in the Union Canal.
So over a month now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, over 2 months.
Oh, okay.
It's over 2 months that she's been missing.
Yes. Yeah,
she's been missing from the 18th was her last official sighting by her mum. She was sporadic sightings for a few days afterwards, but then she's been missing until the 21st of January the following year when she's shown up.
Mm-hmm.
The post-mortem that was performed on Anne showed that she had been deceased for at least 2 months. At least 2 months she'd been dead for.
Right.
But what was really strange, her body had only been in the water for a matter of days. To tell me where your mind's, I can see your brain ticking. What are you thinking right now? She's been definitely dead for a few months.
So a few
She's
months.
been in the water for a few days.
So her body could have been in that house for 2 months. I reckon she, on her way home, she met someone, she had some hanky-panky, they got carried away, she got choked, and then the body was left there until the person could figure out what to do with the body.
Is that what you're going with?
Yeah. Then they were like, crap, we need to get rid of the body, wrap her up, and throw her in the fucking river. Okay. That's my conclusion. End of episode, guys. Thank you very much.
So where my mind went with this is that means her killer had to have stored her body somewhere for that entire period of time
Inside the house.
before eventually choosing the dumping site.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you dumped in the river, and you
with-
said the river or the whatever it is like leads near her house. So it's got to be in her house.
So
I reckon she knew the killer.
So her flat, I'll tell you now to throw a cog in the works. Her flat had no smell of decomp, which I've never smelled actual decomp because I've never smelled a dead body before. But from everything that I've researched from people that have seen them, have smelt them, all these kind of things, and all the things that I've listened to and kind of researched, they all say that smell is something that is only that smell. That you wouldn't disguise it for anything else. So you would be able to smell it. So the body isn't going to have been stored in the flat.
So how long till the body starts decomposing?
Well, the body pretty much starts decomposing straight away.
But when does the smell start coming?
Probably a few days.
Right, okay.
Yeah, within a few days, they normally say, because the body starts to break down, and you've got to remember all that bile and all that, your body starts to release gases and your organs start to break down. So what happens
if the body was stored in a freezer? Inside the house?
You are getting ahead of what I'm
Chester freezer
going to cover.
See?
So the question the listeners, everybody can ask is, why would the body have been stored for that period of time before finding the dumping site?
Because
you guys have a thing.
I don't think he or she, whoever he or she had sex with, meant to kill him.
No.
I reckon she was in some crazy ass fetish shit.
Really? Is that what you're going for?
And he just got a bit carried away, and he or she were doing the business, choked her to fucking death. She fucking passed out. Heart stopped beating, or whatever word you want to use, the fucking fancy word earlier on. And they're like, "Fuck, what do I do?" I reckon he or she put them in the fucking Chester fridge. Yeah, maybe, and gone, right, fuck. And now, what do I do now? Panicked, and then figured if I just dump in the river would just fucking take it.
So I'll just throw something else out there, a bit of information for you all to know. So I couldn't see anywhere in any of my research any mention of abuse of the body. So I'm talking necrophilia, okay?
You said she was choked.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they knew she was raped, but because of how badly because of how badly she was decomposed, they couldn't ascertain whether there had been abuse to her corpse, okay? Which I'm going down the necrophilia type of things, yeah? So where my mind went with it was the motive for storing her body so long necrophilia related? We've seen it with lots of other serial killers and lots of other killers. They store the body because they're into necrophilia. Yeah, and they have sex with a dead corpse, and that's what they do. And is that possibly something to think about? It's just something to kind of get your mind working and think, could that possibly be one of the motives?
And how did they know it was rape, though?
Because they ascertained she was raped.
Right, okay, so she was still
I'm not
alive.
A medical professional,
so she was still alive
raped.
And she was raped. Then,
yeah, they ascertained she was raped, yeah. So the canal was trawled for any possible evidence, but again, that seemed to kind of go the way that everything did in this case, just completely nowhere. Ann's flat was examined, and it was actually found that multiple items had been taken from her flat. That included a camera, a black handbag, a photo album with loads of photos in, a lighter with Ann's initials engraved on it, and lastly, a black leather jerkin. Okay, a black leather jerkin is basically like kind of like a leather body warmer, but just like a leather, not with any warming type of agent in it, if that makes sense. So kind of like a vest.
Right.
Yeah. So we've seen multiple times with serial killers that they do tend to take trophies from their victims. Okay. And we would assume that by these things being taken from Ann's flat, these are potentially trophies.
So she knows the victim. I mean, she knows the killer.
It might not be.
There was no sign of breaking and entering. Yeah. So she had to willingly let that person inside the house.
They could have took her keys.
Could have.
So,
But they had to know where she lived as well. If they took her keys, they had to know where she lived.
no, I'm just throwing it out there. They could have possibly have took her keys.
So if they did take her keys, they still would have had to know where they live. If they didn't take her keys, she still would have had to known her or him anyway. I reckon she knew him. I honestly did.
Okay.
I reckon she was there. That person was there willingly.
So what you've got to ask is, could Anne fell the victim of a serial killer who was stalking the area at the time? Yeah,
nah, she knew him.
We see this all the time with like trophies being taken off victims. Ted Bundy did this, Joel Rifkin did this, Edmund Kemper did this, Jeffrey Dahmer did this. But they all took different things. Some took body parts, some took actual items, some took IDs. You know, could she have possibly been the victim of a serial killer? It's a very, very, very good possibility that she could have been. Former detective Chris Clark has a theory that Ann Ballantine could potentially have fell victim of John Taylor. If you know that name, you know that he was known as the Beast of Bramley. So Taylor would have been about 30 at the time of Ann's murder. So perfect kind of time to start as a serial killer. He regularly passed through Edinburgh, and his MO actually matches up with how Anne's body was held and dumped months after her murder. The 2001 murder of Leanne Ternan that Taylor was convicted of bared a really scarily striking resemblance to how Anne's murder was completed and carried out. Taylor had kept Leanne's body in a freezer for 9 months after killing her, before choosing his ultimate dumping site. Leanne had been wrapped in a duvet. She had a cable tie and a scarf wrapped around her neck used as a ligature. The only significant difference between the victims was that Leanne was found in the densely wooded area of Lindley Woods, not a body of water like Anne was found in. So it's very striking resemblance of dumping methods, which is not very common with killers. That is not a very common MO.
Right.
To store a body for that long. It's not. Once Taylor's trial was over, officers who were involved in his investigation were all convinced that he was likely responsible for multiple unsolved murders in the area that he wasn't convicted of. Isabel and Graham Ballantine, though, have other ideas. They were adamant that they knew who was responsible for her death. The man who cannot be identified for legal reasons was investigated, and police found that they might have had a suspect in him. The report was taken to the Procurator Fiscal, and they basically, in Scotland, they're the ones that deal with majority of the crimes, and they present the cases for the prosecution. Okay, so that's who the Procurator Fiscal are. But they felt that they didn't have enough evidence to take the case forward, so it was pretty much just dropped with this guy. Graham said in a statement, quote, "We know who it is, but we are not allowed to say. He is a sociopath. He has to be. We have a picture of him. He didn't know the picture was being taken at the time. He was sitting with our aunt at a family function. He had his expression on his face I will never forget. He looked pure evil. We still have that picture stored away somewhere. I don't think he will ever confess. He killed her because if he could not have her, then no one else could. He has to have pressure put on him before, and he did not bother. But if someone does know something, then please come forward. Please put us out of our misery. I would be happy to see him jailed." End quote. So if it was that person that had a picture took with him at the family function, that would fit in with what you said about her knowing her killer.
Yeah.
That would fit in with that if that was where it was going down. Her parents are adamant that it was him.
Right.
And he's just out living his life. They're adamant on this. They are completely 100% certain that this is the person.
He's innocent, though, until proven guilty, though, isn't he?
He is, and there's not enough evidence
yeah.
to bring it. And his name's not anywhere because legalities, he's not allowed to be.
Yeah.
So, and they're not allowed to say his name. It doesn't matter. Even 30 years down the line, they're still not allowed to say his name. So, as the years passed with no progression in holding Anne's killer accountable, there were multiple attempts to use the advancements in DNA and investigative techniques to help kind of get some closure in the case. In 2008, Bert Swanson, who at the time was head of the Lothian Borders Police cold case team, took the case on and started reinvestigating it, painstakingly reviewing all of the evidence that had been kind of obtained. He submitted a new DNA sample and actually sought help from an expert in knots. So the ligatures that were around that bound her feet and her hands, they were kind of all submitted, and he hoped that maybe the answer might lie in how Anne was actually bound.
Right.
The main issue, though, in this case, when it comes to the DNA at the scene, was that Anne's body was recovered from water. Water contaminates the nuclei in the DNA, therefore degrading the sample. So what it essentially means is that realistically, if Anne's bodies hadn't been in the water, there may well have been a chance of them getting a viable sample to test against known killers that were already in the system.
Yeah.
Potentially linking them to this.
But
there wasn't.
Affected it.
Yeah, the water completely degraded the sample, making it essentially useless. So, sadly, the person that dumped her body chose the perfect dumping place because there was no DNA there wasn't a viable sample for them to use. In 2014, there was another review into Anne's murder by Detective Inspector Rory Hamilton from the Major Investigation Team. This was ultimately concluded in 2016 upon no new evidence or information being brought forward in the case. Ann Ballantine's case is still open, and they welcome any new information that could help find her killer. Police Scotland do not close any cold cases until they are solved, and anyone who has any information should contact 101 or call Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111. Isabel, Anne's mum, said in a statement, quote, "We never got to see her one last time, which is the killer. Most people get to see the body or kiss the body if they want to. We never got that chance. The body was too decomposed. We never got to say goodbye. It's difficult knowing he's about. It makes my blood boil. He's probably with his family and Anne is 6 feet under. Why does he deserve that? I'm very bitter. There's not a day goes by when I don't think about her and wish she was still here with us. We still hope for justice. I see some of her friends in the street sometimes. They're with their children walking along, just doing everyday things. And I think she should be there and should have her and her children. But Anne didn't get that chance, did she?"
No.
End quote. Anne was buried in Moreton Hall Cemetery. Sadly, this was against her wishes. Anne actually wanted to be cremated. And she told her mum after they were kind of like watching a movie together where I'm assuming someone was being buried. She said that the thought of her being buried amongst bugs creeped her out. But again, because of the way that she was killed, they couldn't risk cremating her remains if they needed to exhume her at a later date. So she ended up having to be buried, which was against her wishes. She didn't want to be buried.
Yeah.
So sadly, that's where today's case lies, completely cold and completely unsolved, with nobody held accountable for Ann Ballantine's death, essentially. I mean, it could. I looked into a couple of things with John Taylor, and it could possibly be that the thing is, a lot of his MOs are like scattered. Like, he doesn't dump them in like always in a body of water or always in woods. They're always quite scattered, and he did tend to go towards sex workers. And Anne wasn't a sex worker that we could see anywhere or that was reported anywhere. So I don't know. I mean, what do you all think about that? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I believe it's John Taylor. It's just a little bit. It's convenient that he was in the area at the time, but
You can't blame him until innocence proven guilty, as they say, isn't it?
yeah,
So,
I mean, I think it's weird that Leanne Turnan's body was stored in pretty much exactly the same way as essentially what Ann Ballantine's body most likely was.
Yeah, but you said that could be a copycat. Do you know what I mean?
Well, no, because he wasn't caught until way later on. Leanne Turnan's was murdered in 2001.
Right.
So this was years and years and years later. So it's not like I don't know. I don't know where to go with this case. I kind of went between, could it have been that family friend at the function? Could it be John Taylor? And he just kind of, he started off with her. He would have been around 30, so it would have been his probably most likely his first killing
Could have
of
been.
his years, because he was known to attack sex workers, and he was a rapist and all those kind of things. So it does match up with his MO. But I don't know. I mean, the official killer was never ever held accountable, and that person that they think did it, her parents think did it, still lives in the area. He still lives there, and he's still kind of just doing his own
Doing his own
thing.
thing. I
And
don't think you're able to find out, are you, unless they solve the case.
sadly, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think this is going to be one of those cases that you always hope that's going to get solved, but I just don't see how it's going to get solved when the DNA, normally the DNA comes through eventually, and there's no viable DNA for them to use.
Yeah, of course.
So I don't see where, unless her killer has a striking moment of guilt where they have a deathbed confession or something like that, because the killer would be older by now.
Yeah.
And we were talking 30 odd years ago. So, the killer would be way older. Maybe you might get a deathbed confession, or
You might do. You never know.
her parents might just go to the grave with not having anything. I mean, her poor dad, I'm pretty sure I saw in one source that like her dad's got like dementia or something now.
Right.
He's not great. And she was saying, she's coming on to 70 now. And she was saying, I don't think I'm ever going to get any closure before I die.
Yeah.
So her brother and sister are still around, they're in like their 40s. So they're still around, and they always hope that something might come up. But I don't think they're holding their breath either.
No.
If nothing's happened in the last 30 years, and
I
unless DNA can come that far that it can pull out some viable DNA from the samples, I don't know. I mean, it was a really shit case to research, to be honest, because it was just so sad, because it just wasn't going anywhere. And as soon as they thought they could go somewhere, it just was another dead end every single time.
Yeah.
So it's just really, really sad case this week. We don't normally like doing unsolved cases because they just kind of feel a little bit
morbid.
Yeah, more morbid than anything, because there's no conclusion to it, is there? There's not satisfaction at the end, but there's no definite finish to it because no one's been held accountable. It's so sad. But we hope you enjoyed that case this week, guys. We are going to release one of our monthly episodes, so that's going to be coming out in the next week or so for our March episode. Do you have anything you would like to add to today's case, Atty? You've said your opinion, haven't you?
I have. I've said everything I got to say.
Yeah. All right then. Well, thank you guys for listening. We really, really appreciate it as usual. I will upload the pictures of Anne and her family. And kind of, I've found a quite nice couple of pictures of her, so I'll upload those to our Instagram. And we hope you've all had a really, really nice week and a nice weekend. And we will catch you guys in a few weeks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye-bye.